Welcome to the Plan Commission meeting for June 20, 2017, for those that have not had the pleasure before. Once we do the roll call and go through the minutes from last time, the way it works is city staff presents on an item. Once they're done, they open it up just to the commission for technical questions. Once we're done with those technical questions, which may be many, maybe few, we open it up to the public for commentary. If you have something to say, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address so we have it for the minutes, and then try to keep your comments as germane to the topic as possible. We'd appreciate that. Once everybody's had their opportunity to speak, we close public commentary, bring it back to the commission for discussion and a vote. We'd appreciate it if you silence your cell phones during this so we're not distracted by phone calls. And with that, let us call the roll.
David Borsak.
Present.
Ed Bowen. Jeffrey Tomes. Thomas Wojtek.
Here.
John Hintz.
Here.
Steve Cummings.
Here.
Kathleen Propp.
Here.
John Kiefer.
Here.
Robert Weigert. Michael Ford.
Here.
And welcome to our new member, Mr. Ford.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. And let's approve the minutes from June 6th. Do we have any additions, deletions, corrections, etc.?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion clearly passes. Let's move on to item number 1, accept sidewalk and traffic signal easement at 606 East Murdoch Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
The City of Oshkosh is requesting acceptance of a sidewalk, traffic signal, and conduit easement for installation of sidewalk, traffic signals, and related equipment. Here's the subject lot. It is an irregularly shaped subject property at 10.49 acres in size, located at the northwest corner of East Murdoch Avenue and Bowen Street. The site has an industrial land use and is home to Musa Metal Products. The city's engineering division is requesting an easement from Musa Metal for the installation of sidewalk, traffic signals, and related equipment. The easement will be about 2 feet wide, running 294 feet along the south property line to the southeast corner of the lot, including a 15.2 foot by 12 foot triangular area at the corner of Bowen Street and East Murdoch Avenue. The easement is necessary to allow for the sidewalk to be removed or to be moved away from the curb during the reconstruction of this section of East Murdoch Avenue, which is scheduled for later this year. The easement will also allow for traffic signal equipment to be placed so as to maintain ADA accessible sidewalks and ramps, as well as create a larger terrace for snow storage. And staff recommends approval of the acceptance of the proposed easement as requested.
All right, any technical questions on this one? Seeing none, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item? Okay, back to the commission.
Move approval. Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, call the roll.
Hintz.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Propp.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Borsak.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
All right, let's move on to item number 2, access control variance to allow reduced spacing of driveways at 2500 block of Harrison Street.
Thank you. The petitioner is requesting an access control variance to permit a 77-foot separation between driveways where municipal code requires a 125-foot separation. The subject site is a 1.7 acre parcel of land located on the west side of Harrison Street, south of East Packer Avenue, and north of Libby Avenue. Plans were recently approved for construction of a new personal storage facility at the site. So here's the plan for the new site. The petitioner has planned to construct a 17-unit personal storage facility on the subject lot. The proposed driveway access to the site will be separated from the existing driveway on the north property, or the property to the north, by 77 feet. An access control variance is required as 125-foot separation is required. According to the applicant, the reason for the variance request is that an existing utility pole would need to be removed in order for the driveway to meet the minimum separation from the driveway to the north. The petitioner also states that separation reduction would not cause any safety concerns, as the personal storage facility will have a low traffic volume. Staff does not have any concerns with the driveway separation reduction, as this stretch of Harrison Street experiences relatively low traffic counts. The new use of the property should generate only minimal additional traffic, as the personal storage facility is expected to be accessed infrequently. The existing driveway entrances to the north and south are separated by about 239 feet according to the site plan. This results in hardship, as it does not allow the new driveway to meet the 125-foot minimum spacing requirement from each of the existing neighboring driveways. The location of the existing utility pole also poses a hardship, as it is centrally located along the lot frontage, which restricts the driveway from being constructed further to the south. And staff recommends approval of an access control variance to allow a 77-foot driveway separation at the 2500 block of Harrison Street as requested.
Okay, technical questions? None. Anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission.
Move for approval?
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, call the roll.
Hint,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Borsuk,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
Moving on, item number 3, approval of general development plan for multi-tenant retail office use located on the 1000 block of North Washburn Street.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting approval of a general development plan for the construction of a multi-tenant retail and office use located at the 1000 block of North Washburn Street. The subject development areas consists of a single vacant parcel, approximately 3.17 acres in size. The property has an SMU PD zoning designation, and the 10 and 20-year comprehensive land use plans recommend commercial development for the site. The proposed development site is bounded by North Washburn Street on the north and east, and big box retail establishments on the west, and Dick's Sporting Goods and PetSmart on the south. The land use pattern in the area is characterized and established retail and service uses such as Lowe's, Quick Trip, Panera Bread, and Dick's Sporting Goods. Here's an aerial view of the subject site. The petitioner is proposing to construct a total of 3 structures, which would be occupied by commercial, retail, and office tenants. The development plan identifies a 2-phase approach to developing the subject site. It is anticipated that at least 1 and potentially 2 of the proposed structures would include a drive-through facility. The proposed uses are consistent with the recommended land use in the city's comprehensive plan, and both retail and office uses are permitted in the underlying suburban mixed-use zoning district. And approval of the proposed development plan will meet the requirements of the Planned Development Overlay District. The proposed tenant spaces will have approximately 30 to 60 daily employees, and the businesses will be open during normal business hours of operation, typically between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. The proposed development plan would include a total of 3 structures, which will house between 1 and 4 commercial units. Phase 1 of the proposed development plan will include construction of a 2,501 square foot bank with a drive-through facility and an 8,252 square foot structure to house approximately 4 retail or commercial tenants. Other Phase 1 improvements include 3 refuse enclosure areas, surface parking lots, facilities, and site landscaping. Phase 2 would include construction of a 7,747 square foot structure to house approximately 3 retail or commercial tenants. The buildings are proposed to be located on the north and east portion of the site, so that the main entrance areas face south and west towards the internal commercial campus. Parking areas are proposed to be located at the southwest corner of the site, abutting the existing internal shared roadway. Vehicular access to the site is proposed to be provided by 2 existing access drives running from North Washburn Street to the development site. The first existing access drive straddles the south property line, right here, and the second runs north-south from North Washburn Street to the internal roadway intersection. The internal circulation for vehicles is well defined, with inclusion of landscape islands at entrances and parking rows, with the exception of a pedestrian walks directly in front of the building's entrances, and an existing 5-foot wide walkway running along the west property line. The submitted plans do not provide any pedestrian connection to the public sidewalk on North Washburn Street or the walk at the internal roadway 4-way intersection. And staff recommends a condition of approval that formal pedestrian access be provided connecting the pedestrian crossings at the internal roadway intersection through the subject development to the public sidewalk on North Washburn Street. The proposed 159 parking spaces exceeds the range of the code-required maximum 78 stalls. Upon specific implementation plan review process, a conditional use permit would need to be granted to permit the parking facilities to exceed 125% of the development's minimum number of required parking spaces. The submittal does not include a lighting or photometric plan, but all lighting on the site will be required to meet zoning code requirements, and it will be analyzed during the specific implementation plan review process. Signage for the site is proposed to consist of both wall-mounted and ground signage. The petitioner is proposing a 12-foot tall multi-tenant monument sign, seen on this slide, to be located at the northeast corner of the subject site. The final signage plans will be required to meet code requirements and will be evaluated during the SIP approval process. A conceptual landscaping plan for the site has been submitted with the application and includes a variety of shrubs and trees. The proposed landscaping is dispersed along building foundations and refuse enclosures and will buffer the paved areas throughout the development site. Internal landscaped parking lot islands are proposed to contain trees and other vegetation that will act to break up the mass of hard surface associated with the parking lot. Staff identified that the internal landscape parking lot islands do not appear to meet the code required 7 feet wide and 250 square foot minimum area. Staff recommends that the petitioner adjust the width of the parking lot landscape islands to meet code requirements to ensure that future landscaping can be supported. The final landscape plan will need to meet zoning code requirements and will be analyzed during the SIP review process. The petitioner has indicated that stormwater from the site will be directed to the stormwater detention basin on the neighboring Lowe's site, which was sized to take in the additional volumes for the entire developable area. The Department of Public Works has reviewed the proposed development plan and noted that documentation and designs must meet the city's stormwater performance criteria for both water quantity and quality control. Final stormwater management plans will need to be reviewed and approved by the Department of Public Works as part of the site plan review process. Proposed building elevations have not been submitted at this time, but will be submitted and analyzed during the SIP review process. The proposed structures will need to meet the commercial building design standards, which are found in the zoning ordinance. And staff believes that the development will have a positive impact on surrounding lands, and will be harmonious with the intended character of the general vicinity, and will not be detrimental to neighboring properties or the community as a whole. Staff also feels that the proposal reflects the city's development and planning policies, enhances the appearance of the area, and is architecturally compatible with nearby and adjacent structures. As such, staff recommends approval of the general development plan with the following conditions. Formal pedestrian access separate and distinct from the vehicle drive lanes be provided connecting the pedestrian crossings at the internal roadway intersection through the subject development to the public sidewalk on North Washburn Street. A conditional use permit be granted to permit the parking facilities to exceed 125% of the development's minimum number of required parking spaces in conjunction with specific implementation plan review process, and proposed internal parking lot landscape islands meet code requirements upon specific implementation plan review process.
All right, thank you. Technical questions? Gaddy?
This is probably a question for the petitioner. I hope they're here. The number of parking spaces seems utterly excessive. It's twice the number of the maximum that our parking ordinance would suggest. And so I don't know if staff wants to comment on this now, or we can wait until the petitioner talks to us.
Well, Ed was on his way back from Green Bay. He got sidetracked, so he was supposed to be here. So, I mean, let's see if we can't go to a couple other
Okay.
questions first.
Okay.
But it is, you're right. It is larger than we allow right now. I think some of the responses that you might get on this particular one is that you're kind of confined to a certain footprint because you've got Dick's.
Yeah, no, I understand
proposed,
that.
So the only way to do it would be you'd be decreasing some of those areas in favor of green space. So
Right.
Potentially get some green space, but I'd defer to Ed on that. Ed,
Okay.
when he shows up on that. Or
David?
that can be, it still has to come back through SIP as well. Just
David and then Steve?
Will the building designs come back here for SIP?
That is correct. When we broke out the process, the GDP versus the SIP, the GDP was meant to be kind of like a preliminary plat, so you would just get an idea of
Concept,
concept of
basically.
what it is before they had to spend the detailed plans for the landscaping, the architecture and all that. That's correct. But The process is also supposed to identify any concerns that you might have going forward when the SIP comes forward. So if there's some concerns, we can put that in. The applicant will know that. We can get that in the minutes. Things like if Ed's not here, the parking situation and the reasoning for that.
And the follow-up to that, or the genesis of that question, when we had some other development in that general area, we had concerns about how it appeared either from 41 or from Washburn. And I would hope that it'd be conveyed to petitioner our expectations of how it is, what it's going to look like facing the corridor
And the good news
and the
is,
frontage road.
and the good news is the buildings are close to the street as opposed to looking at parking, but hopefully they're nice to look at.
Exactly, because it's going to be the backside of the building. We've had the same concerns along Westtown, if you recall that, because you have all the stuff between Westtown and 21, and that's where we put a lot of emphasis on that back, on the back of the development, so it wouldn't look like the back of the development. I think you want the same thing here. You're referring to what we did with Dick's and PetSmart, where we kind of.
Ask for something on the walls.
Correct.
Well, and also that in general concept, we had looked at the 41 corridor as that the 41 side is the street side, and that we wanted something more extensive than and certainly here they have ample property to go and do some things with it. The second question is that with the noted bank, was there a traffic study done, or that there's enough stacking space there?
The stacking is internal to the site, so yeah, we weren't, when we looked at the site plan, it's all coming back into the site. It's not going out onto Westtown. So any backing would come back to that drive aisle. There's certainly enough room to get through there, so we weren't concerned. It met our code requirements.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I would agree with Kathy. The parking seems excessive because of the size of the stores. I mean, they almost look like they're going to wind up being small offices, not retail with a lot of traffic in and out. The other thing is, I was under the impression that there was a lot of contaminated soil in this area that at what time had been used, I think, by Keena's to dump a lot of waste from demolition of buildings.
Demolition of buildings is one thing. It's poor soils that you have to deal with from a construction standpoint. It's not a contaminated site.
I'm not sure.
Well, we're not sure, but that's, again, the developer will have to move forward with that part of the process. They'll have to go through the DNR approval procedures for grading and stormwater and all that stuff. Yes, yep, correct.
And the second question is, this is a two-phase. What is the timeline? Is it going to start this fall and we're going to, months down the road? Or?
Ed, where are you? No, he's not here yet. He's still on the ride. They're moving forward at this time with the GDP because they want to be moving forward with that SIP relatively soon. When we looked at this plan, we asked potentially should we push it back because we have no July 4th meeting, so to push it back to the July 18th. They didn't want to push it back to the July 18th because they think they have something in the works. They want to come back with that SIP as soon as possible. So their intent is to get the general consensus on the GDP now and then come back, I would assume, within the next couple months with an SIP. Now, that being said, there's a couple things that we do still need to handle. Talk about that floor area ratio with the parking. And here comes Ed. Ed, you are welcome to come up to the podium and, sorry.
Can we give the guy a chance to catch his breath, or you?
No.
Okay.
Finish our technical questions.
Okay, are there other technical questions before we,
That's right.
do you want him to answer questions now, or?
Why don't we, are we done with technical questions? I'm sorry, I jumped ahead.
Ben? You ready? Kathy, you want to start?
I raised the first question about excessive parking, double the maximum in our parking ordinance.
Correct. And Ed Bowen, 601 Oregon Street,
Thank you.
Suite B, Oshkosh, 54902. You're correct. And I think This being, and this is probably going to be the theme for most of the answers that I give here as sort of the GDP part of this, we sort of threw out this first idea that we had here. I think we acknowledge, I've talked with my partners and I've talked with staff as well, that the second go-round here is likely to whittle that parking down fairly significantly. I have no problem with that. I recognize that it's overparked. We recognize that it's overparked, and frankly, parking is expensive. So most likely, on the specific implementation plan submittal, you're going to see a significant reduction in parking.
So would you
I would be more than
object to our not approving a 125%?
I would be more than open to some sort of condition altering, with staff review or, whatever staff recommends, things like that. My gut tells me that we are going to be, because of the nature, so the nature of this site is a little bit funny. The shape is a little funny. We're not used to designing buildings for this. We're also significantly limited on what we can build and where we can build it on this particular site because of a deed restriction that was put on this when it was developed for Lowe's. So this particular parcel is limited to a certain number of buildings, a total square footage of overall building space, as well as a visual corridor restriction on how big each of those buildings can be and where they can be positioned. So we have a little bit of a, and then we have to meet a certain parking threshold too. So this is all part of this sort of weird background agreement that we have to satisfy as well. So not that supersedes, obviously, the zoning code or anything like that, but we need to make sure that we are designing the site to raise as few objections from that counterparty as possible. So, and we can do that. We can reduce parking and still be okay here. But the numbers, to some degree, are always going to be a little bit out of whack because we have a really big site that we can only put a certain number of square footage or a certain square footage number on, and then a parking ratio that's a little bit out of line with some of that as well. So the numbers here may not always be clean, but I think we can definitely work with staff to make sure that it doesn't look like it's as overparked as it is.
And at this point, Kathy, just that we are not approving that conditional use permit or the 125%. We're begging that off to the specific implementation plan. So it'd have to be approved with that. I think the concerns that were being noted that we think the Plan Commission, I'm not going to speak for Plan Commission, is concerned that that there's too much parking. That we need to find ways to pare that back if possible. So when they do come back for the SIP, if that's a general consensus, there should be a little bit more green space on that site.
Okay.
Steve, do you want to ask your question?
Ed, a couple of questions. One, I was under the impression that that was a landfill at one time. I think Keenest dumping a lot of rubble from demolition of buildings. So I don't know if it's contaminated or not, but there's a lot of pressures in there.
Yeah. And this is, I don't know how apocryphal this is or not, but there is, I think it was State Bank of something or other. I don't remember which bank it was, but one of the old banks downtown was demolished and potentially dumped out there. So we have dug, so for the first phase, I guess we'll call it that, for Dixon PetSmart, we dug a number of test pits to determine what kind of soils we were working with and what the composition was out there. And we did so, with the goal of making sure that, number one, we identify what's out there. We did soil borings as well. So we know that the stuff that we're working with out there does not appear to be environmentally sensitive stuff. It doesn't appear to be contaminated stuff. It just appears to be bad fill material, which is not necessarily bad for building parking lots on, but it's bad for building buildings on, obviously. So one of the things that we were able to do in the first phase was work around some of that stuff a little bit to utilize some of those areas for if we didn't have to do any work there, we tried to make sure we didn't do any work there. So there is some of that historical stuff out there. A lot of it will be cleaned up as part of this. Some of it will be left in a way that we can work around. But yeah, there are some of those conditions out there, Steve. But it's you never know what you're going to get until you dig down.
And the second one, second question is, this is a two-phase project. What is the timeline you're looking at?
I look at the southeastern-most building. We are at lease with users on that building. The northwest corner of the site, we are at lease with another user for that. So my gut tells me that we need to be in the ground probably yet this summer, doing site preparation stuff for both of those users. The phase 2 portion of it, I do not have any definitive activity on that one. I don't have any letters of intent. We've got some folks sniffing around and things like that. I think that's going to change pretty quickly once we put up the first 2 buildings. But my gut tells me that we're probably looking at this first phase coming online late this year, beginning of next year, and people occupying those spaces probably in the first or second quarter of next year. Unless we have a major shift in the marketplace, I would expect that we'd probably be under construction on the second phase. I would say maybe end of next summer, with occupancy probably another year out from that first phase. That's my guess on phase 2. I'm a lot more comfortable with phase 1 than I am phase 2 right now.
All right, other questions for Ed, as long as he's here? David?
I'm
Ed-
always here.
No.
I'm always here.
I had a concern, and it's similar to the ones that were raised with the development of Dick's and Petco, and that's
PetSmart.
or Pets. The amount of how it's going to be viewed from Washburn and 41.
Right.
And I would hope that there's a level of architectural detail and landscaping that makes this, that it is not the backside of the building.
Right, and I think one thing that we have in our favor to that regard in this phase of the project, as opposed to Dick's and PetSmart, is that with Dick's and PetSmart, with users like that, you tend to be given their box and you build their box. With a project like this, smaller users in the 2,000 to 3,000 square foot range, even if they are national credit tenants, things like that, they have a lot less leverage as to what the building actually looks like. So we have more control over that. This is being done under the new zoning code, which I think is actually it takes some of the design away from us a little bit, in the sense that we are going to have to do a significant level of the foundation plannings, because it's a front yard. We have a lot more stuff that we're actually required to do here versus the other one where you guys had to put some conditions on it. So I think we have the ability to go with a little bit of a higher style building here, just because I think that's what we want to do. And number 2, the new zoning code, I think, is going to require us to do that a little bit more than the previous project. And the SIP will have full elevations and have all that stuff. So you will, David, I promise you will have a kick at that cat. I promise.
Thank you.
We'll extend extra time for that meeting.
Yeah, if you want to schedule that one, don't schedule any workshops.
Yeah. Other questions for the petitioner? Kathy?
Just a comment, follow up on that. I drove out to look at the site and looked again at the Washburn site of Dick's, and it's not impressive. There are no windows. It's
Yeah.
not good. Maybe it met our minimum standards, but
Yeah.
and you've just said that you're hoping that development architecturally
Right.
along the frontage road will be, even though it's the back side of the front
Right,
of the-
I'd
it'll
anticipate
be more
this.
attractive, and I'm hoping so.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think so as well. And like I said, you unfortunately, when you work with, and we have this, we're hamstrung a little bit with, in a lot of municipalities that we do work for Dixon. I had the same argument with the folks up in Rib Mountain last year. You know, you get their box and you build their box, and you have to make it look as pretty as you possibly can. But you start throwing windows where they have a warehouse, and you start throwing windows where they have their office, which is set in stone on their plans. A lot of times, you know, they kill the deal over stuff like that. So you kind of have to we have to walk a fine line with that. But I would agree with you. I mean, I don't look at the wall at a PetSmart and say, that's a great looking wall.
Do the other buildings block that a little bit when they're up?
Will these
Yeah.
block that?
It change.
Well, as long as you're looking at the exact right angle, yes.
Oh, okay. That's
Yes,
helpful.
no, they-
No, no. I
I'm
mean,
just
these,
trying to-
Tom, these really like this is gonna be.
I know where this. I know. I walk by
Yeah,
the-
I mean, you're gonna be looking like
Okay.
if you look head on from like the Panera parking lot,
Right.
Like maybe you'll block a little bit of
Okay,
that,
so
but
it's-
you're not gonna.
Okay.
This isn't gonna soften that more than.
Well, and just one point on that, though, we did add additional landscaping in that area, so as that matures, it's gonna break up that
Yeah.
wall a bit more, and I think there's some more vertical elements that have been put into that wall as well, so.
Yeah, we
over
did-
time, I think Kathy's right, it's a side of the wall, but I think we tried to elevate the appearance a little bit more, you know, with that landscape and some of those other elements.
Yeah, I remember those conversations with Dave Buck specifically.
Other questions for the petitioner? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have other people in the public who'd like to have any questions or comments about this particular item? All right, seeing none. Public commentary is closed. Back to the commission. David?
I'll certainly support this, and I understand that it'll come back, but I would have, along that, Ed's comments, sometimes we hear that the developer is sort of boxed in by the big box stores. But I suspect that other communities deal with this, and I would ask staff to see if they could reach out to their trade association of how they deal with big box. Other communities deal with.
I think we've seen images from Georgia or someplace where on one of these where some big box had done
because
something.
we know that, or at least because we know that national chains have multiple looks in their buildings. You know, and you know, my favorite kicking boy is Menards, but you find out that they have multiple designs of their stores, and I think that you know that there can be legitimate requests of these type of developments to say, you know, you have alternative designs that you've done in other communities, and I think that kind of would be helpful to have that kind of information when we address those in the future.
I mean, you're absolutely correct, David. I mean, different communities have different standards, and you're right. There's different model Menards in different parts of the country, as there's different
The McDonald's. There's a million different
in
kinds.
different parts of the state. It's how much is the city of Oshkosh, you know, that's the whole GDP, SIP process. We have our minimum standards. They're gonna meet our minimum standards. It's when we get into the plan development, we get into the base standard modifications, when we start doing some of that negotiation. But you're right.
Well,
If you don't want to approve, if you want something upgraded, you put the condition on it to upgrade it, and then the developer or whoever named the big box decides whether they want to stick with the city or they want to move down the road to the next community that's not going to require that. I mean, it's always going to be out there. It's not a scare tactic. It's not anything. They're going to come here. They're going to either build what we tell them to build. If we've gone too far from their perspective, they'll typically move down the road to another market. We just have to be cognizant.
and I'm aware, and this, you know, to take it any further this isn't the time. But the fact is that we should be aware of what they do and to call them out to at least this. I mean, Menards led us to believe that was the only design. And,
I remember, yeah.
and so those are the kind of things that at least that we have a little more understanding of what it is, and leave it at that.
Steve, I think your hand was up.
I'll just support what David said. I mean, CVS is a prime example. I mean, I've seen CVS that look very nice, and we've got E-level store. It's a box. You know, landscaping they has flowers are selling this time of year, but there's been a lot of questioning about, quote, the box stores that are now suing communities over assessments, and there's been discussion at the league, which, remember, can we afford box stores in our communities? Retailing is changing. They demand a lot of infrastructure, and then just like that, they up and pull up stakes, and we're stuck with a large empty box and a lot of asphalt. So I think as we go forward, I think we can be more demanding what we're looking for architecture.
Keep in mind that this is not a big box,
Yeah, this project.
this particular.
But
So-
going back to what David is saying, I think we can be more demanding of what we allow to be built in this community.
Correct. We just have to be prepared.
Yeah, it's a
When we
negotiation.
ask or push.
It's a
And
negotiation.
they walk away, we just have to be prepared for that. And that, we're all fine with that, but, we just have to be prepared that that might happen, because remember, the chain store, when you're looking, when they come to our market, there's also another 50 markets that they could go in. So things like signage, things like some of these architectural requirements, if it doesn't fit into their formula, and Ed could speak to this better if he's sitting at the table, they'll just go down the road to the next market, because they're going to get they might get a financial incentive, they might blah, blah, blah. So we just have to be prepared for it. It doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do, we just have to be cognizant that that could happen.
Right.
If I can kind of channel one of our former members with Donna Laurie, there's a lot of open space between the road and these businesses, and because they aren't box stores, because they're going to be a strip facing the lots, we're hoping, I'd like to hopefully see some larger trees that would at least break up the lines. That would help them with their designs and everything too, as far as in that area. I just think that's something that needs to be discussed when it comes to.
Just keep in mind, when they plant them, they won't be large trees.
Right. No, exactly.
In 20
but,
years,
but,
they'll
but
be
it's
large.
something. But it's something
Yeah.
that's kind of going along with what we're trying to do. But it also helps green it up a little
Right.
bit. So, just something I was throwing out to keep in mind.
Trees in that setback area between the buildings and the street you're talking?
Yeah, because that's a big area, especially on that north side.
That's in the notes?
Other discussion on this item? Do we have a motion?
Move for approval with conditions.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Keep in mind, it'll come back in a more sophisticated form,
Yes,
correct?
it will.
All right,
We'll have to
Which
deal
is
with the conditional use
a good
permit, landscaping.
okay. All right, seeing none, let's call the roll.
Ince,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Ford, Borsec,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, item number 4 has been withdrawn, correct?
That is correct.
So let's move on to item number 5. This will be a public hearing. Public hearing on proposed creation of a tax increment financing district number 33, Lamico redevelopment, designation of boundaries, and approval of project plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet.
We are- John Cameron, right? John is with Ellers. He'll be assisting if when needed. So, we're proposing to create TID number 33. Tax incremental district number 33 is proposed 4-acre, 5.5 acre blighted area district surrounding the old Lamico property, former Lamico property. So this is the proposed TID boundaries here. It's 4 parcels right now. It's made up of the main Lamico site, the water tower site, which you've seen that's part of that future land swap that we're doing for the water tower. And then there's a little remnant of RDA land that's on it. Creation of the district is intended to assist with removal of the existing blighted and functionally obsolete structure that's on the site to make way for the new, I think it's a 4-story, 140-unit, 340-bed, multiple family, student-centric housing development on that particular site. Proposed TID number 33 is one of the last parcels in that area that's undeveloped. If you look at the TIDs that we've created around this particular area, this is kind of the donut hole that's left. Years ago, when we created both TIF 13 and or 20, which are in this area, we had originally proposed to have TID, this included in the TID. it dropped out. The Plan Commission actually, whoever's on, David was here, Plan Commission approved it with this in the original TID 13. It got dropped out between that and the council. So if you look at this particular TID map, you can see this yellow area in here. That's that kind of that peninsula or donut hole. The other remaining manufacturing parcel in this particular area is the Merck Marine site. The TID itself, the city anticipates, this is the PAYGO TID, the city anticipates making project cost expenditures of approximately $3.9 million to facilitate redevelopment within the district. This total is comprised of approximately $3.3 million in PAYGO development incentives towards an $18 million redevelopment project. Hard construction costs for multiple family development are estimated at approximately $11 million. The project plan, and we'll get to it, we'll go over a little bit of the project plan, also includes costs, and hopefully Jeff put it in there, also includes costs for, well, there's an aerial of the site, so you can see what's going on in the area. Here's the old Lamico site, here's the water tower site, there's another one being built right now that you can see down there. You can see the kind of development pattern that's in the area. This is the newest building being constructed right now. This shows the proposed improvement map. So the development incentive, the 2.5, I think it's a $2.5 million development incentive, PAYGO, is going to help redevelop that site. That cost is related to environmental contamination, site soils, some poor soils in this area, so the TIF is going towards assisting in that, and that's spelled out in the project plan. But also as part of the project plan, you're seeing we're including costs for cul-de-sac construction here at Dawes and here at Riverway, and then we're also including funds for a pedestrian trail to connect to our regional trail system. So you'll be able to access the trail and go up between these two sites where we have an access easement and that small public park area. So they'll connect up to Riverway. So that's included into there. Some other utility costs are included. They're also widening out the sidewalk along this property. We are, as a result of the creation of this district, we're proposing, we're estimating about $15 million in increment value that'll be offset on here. Trying to figure out what else. Well, there are things I wanted to hit on a particular plan. Let's go to the project plan itself, and we'll go over a couple of the pages in there for your edification. Page number 9, and it's all important, but I want to hit some of the highlights. Page number 9 kind of shows the parcel identification map. So you can see the main bit of the TIF is comprised of the 2 Lamico properties, and then the 2 city properties in there. Page 17 is the improvement map, and that shows what's on the board right now, the proposed improvements that will result as the creation of this TIF. And page 19 actually gets into the project costs, and that's where you start to see the costs of the development incentive. The top of that table is the estimated project list. It's about $2.5 million, and you can see the remediation, site work, capping, all that, and that's how the incentive breaks down. And then on the bottom, you see how it plugs into about almost $3.9 million in costs. We're including the development incentive plus the interest on that. You have the Riverwalk connections and the cul-de-sacs. And then page 24, there's some other cash flow tables in there. Page 24 shows the cash flows that are proposed as part of this project. We are estimating that with this particular TIF, with the increment that's being created, that we can close it probably in 2029 or 2030. It's a 27-year TIF. As a blighted area, it can be a 27-year TIF. But with the cash flows that are in the value that's estimated, we think we can close this relatively early as compared to the other TIFs that we've come through the area on. The TIF plan includes the developer's application and includes the market study. The application shows the with TIF or the without TIF. The without TIF IRR is about 4.43%. You add TIF into this with the PAYGO, That gets it up to about an IRR of 10.95%, which, as we discussed in the past, that 10 to 20% is that range. That's what this TIF is going to help support. With that, I mean, we're recommending approval of the boundaries, and the project plan is proposed.
All right. David, technical questions first before we open up?
Yeah, two questions. One, in the developer's agreement, will there be a minimum value for the property? Or you estimated what the number was, what, $15 million?
It'd be $15 million, it'd be about $15 million increment. I think that was what we had.
Will part of the agreement be that they will guarantee a minimum of $15 million, so that those numbers will not will never go down? They could always go up, but they'll never go on?
We've not started actually working on the development agreement, so I'll have to make a note to see whether we've been doing that. With the pay-goes, typically we've not been including a minimum assessed value, because if they don't create the value that they're proposing, they don't get paid back, and it doesn't help their IRR. So it's their incentive to hopefully get this valued up. But because we have some public improvement costs in there for the cul-de-sacs down the line, we might have to look at that. So we'll make a note for the when we put that in there.
The second question, this may not be in the TIF, but where is the proposed next 75-year water tower property?
After, you mean the swap? So you're talking about the swap where we swap in lands?
Yeah.
James, do you have a good idea of where, I know you have a better idea than me where that swap is?
No, I thought.
Well, what's coming down is the current tower's going over here. We're swapping this land out for, I think, some land up in this neck of the woods
Yeah,
for
it's
the
in the
future tower.
It's in the very northeast corner of the site. So basically, on the west end of that cul-de-sac bulb, yeah, right in that
Oh
area
yeah,
that
you
you're.
can see how their site plan is not developed in here. They still have the
Yeah, where that one
area.
existing building and that piece to the north is where we're looking at the proposed swap for in the future. You know, as you said, 75 years from now, when we have to rebuild the tower again, you know, we needed to keep some land set aside because the tower needs to stay in service during construction, just as this one is. So, you know, that's where that land swap that we're working out, where the site is getting or the development is getting the site the existing water tower is currently on, and then they're giving us an basically equivalent amount of land for us to be able to build that next one down the road.
Thank you.
And so what's going to happen is, as the site develops, it will develop kind of in phases. The first part is going to develop all this, and then once the tower goes down, then they'll fill this area in once we complete the land swap.
Yeah, there's a lot of coordination going on right now between their construction forces and our staff in Public Works, as well as our contractor, to make sure we can coordinate when they need to have that area and when we can get the existing tower down to try to facilitate that. So their contractor and our contractor are going to be working together on site for a lengthy amount of time until we can get everything done.
Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? This is the public hearing for this particular project.
We're opening the public hearing.
Yep. Going once?
Meaning the public can come up and comment if there's any comments out there?
Okay,
Close the public hearing?
close the public hearing, back to the commission. Thoughts? Do we support this? Do we have questions? I see you wanting to say something, David.
Well, I'm just trying to, do we frame the motion for the affirmative? How do we frame that for the?
Correct. So if you support it, yeah, the record.
But what is it, is there special verbiage because this was out of,
We've done this before,
yeah, I couldn't remember.
yeah.
That's usually when we want to, when we deny things, when we come forward with denial, we still do everything in the affirmative, so.
All right, I move approval of the creation of TIF District number 33.
Specifically, the project plan and boundaries for TID number 33.
That is correct. Thank you for,
This. Is there a second? I'll second. Moved and seconded to approve this. Are there any questions or any last comments? All right, call the roll then, Deb.
Hintz,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Forsyth,
aye.
Voitek.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
Any other items of business before we move into a workshop?
No, sir.
Motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion's adjourned. Now we have a workshop on potential zoning ordinance change regarding